All right. Starting a little early. Why not? I got nothing better to do. Can everybody hear me? Well, how about you, Kelman? Can you hear me? Seems like you're the only one here. Perfect. So, what I want to talk about today is an upcoming through hike that I'm doing here in Nevada. Just got my new shoes for it today. Hikers are funny creatures. Find a thing that we like and we just keep buying it. I think this is my fourth pair of the Topo. Um, they wear out and I keep getting them. So anyway, these are brand new. The first hike I'll be doing in them will be the Tayubi Crest Trail, which is a 62. Depending on who you ask, there's not a lot of information about this trail. Um, some people say it's 62 miles. Some people say it's 65 miles. My map that I made on Onyx tracks it at 62.3. I have my notes up here on the side of the screen, so if you see me looking off in the distance, it's because I'm checking my notes. Um, Wikipedia says it's a 70-mile trail, which is just flat out wrong. So, um, yeah, I think it's 62.3 miles. Most of the trip reports I have found for this trail do it in 7 days, which is totally respectable. I don't have 7 days. I have 4. Now, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I am kind of prone to overly ambitious ideas. And I don't always finish them, but I always try. And I think that's the most important part. So this is kind of one of those trips where I'm going to have to average about 15 miles a day to finish the whole thing. There are some interesting obstacles and caveats to this trip that make it different than, say, the Tahoe Rim Trail that I just finished back in September. Um, so, first, I want to give you a little bit of history about the trail itself. The bulk of the trail was built in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps, and it is the longest continuous and maintained trail in the state of Nevada. So it is our longest through hike here in the state. Um, it starts at 6,345 feet above sea level and goes up to 11,775 feet at its highest point. The bulk of the trail is over 10,000 feet. My very first day, I have 3,000 feet of elevation gain in a little under 8 miles. So that's going to be a brutal way to start the trip. Once you get up into that 9,000, 10,000 foot range, it flattens out and gets a little bit easier. Um, some of the trail is in the Arc Dome Wilderness, which is the largest designated wilderness area in the state of Nevada. So about 30 miles of the trail is inside this Arc Dome Wilderness. And I have hiked a big section of that. I did the South Creek Canyon. You may have seen that video where there was just tons and tons of flood damage. And that hasn't gotten any better. Nobody's been able to really get out there and do the whoa, Tucson, Arizona. Hello. Um, any trail maintenance. So there's a roughly 4 to 5 mile section that's just still damaged by flash flood. The flash flooding happened in, I think it was 2022, 2023. We had a epic snow year, and then the remnants of Hurricane Hillary hit the state, and so all the snow melted at once and came rushing down these canyons in Arc Dome, and they just are annihilated. So there's going to be a lot of route finding, a lot of obstacles that I'm going to have to navigate around and things like that. So the last day of this trip is going to be a little bit on the spicier side. So my original plan was to do 3 20-mile days, and then the last day would only be like 5 miles, just so I could navigate all of the debris and the route finding and all that stuff. That left me with a dry camp right in the middle. And I don't like dry camping. I know a lot of people it's not a big deal. It is for me. I don't like it. I don't sleep well when I dry camp because I'm nervous about water. So I've kind of, as of last night, revamped the trip. So now I have a 15-mile day with 8,000 feet of elevation gain. Not looking forward to that. Then my second day was only 13 miles, and it'll be kind of easier terrain, fairly easy to navigate. The third day is another 15-mile day. And then the last day is 16, including this 5 miles of flash flood zone that I have to navigate through. I'm not super worried about that section because I've hiked it before, so I know what's out there. Um, I was just out there about 2 weeks ago. I hiked in the first 4 miles just to take a look and see what it all looked like, and it looked just like I expected. It's still tons of debris, downed trees, a couple of big aspen snags that I'm gonna have to navigate around and things like that. So I know what I'm getting into on that last day, and I'll just take it slow and stay safe and just move as I can. I've got all day to cover 16 miles basically. The the trail is managed by 2 separate groups, and I've been in contact with both of them, which is kinda cool because the Arc Dome section, which is about 32 miles, is managed by Friends of the Nevada Wilderness, and the non-wilderness area, which is a mixed use trail, so there could be some mountain bikers and equestrian traffic and things like that on that first 30 miles of the trail, is managed by the Nevada Department of Conservation. And both groups were super friendly when I called and I was kind of grilling them for details about the trail, like trying to understand what I'm getting into doing this 62-mile through hike. And I got a lot of really great information from both of them. And then I got some further information from a viewer here on YouTube. He had been out there last summer. And so he had kind of told me that there might be uh, a couple of beaver ponds between two of the canyons, between it's Tom's Cabin Canyon and Jet Canyon. And unfortunately, that's a fairly narrow part of the trail. So until I get eyes on it, I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. But that could take some creative navigation, or it could take getting wet. And we'll just have to see what that looks like when we get there. Um, I have wanted to do this trail since the first time I summited Arc Dome because I didn't even know that the TCT existed. Um, and we were hiking in through South Creek Canyon to go off and summit Arc Dome, and I saw a sign that said TCT. So I got home, I Googled it, and it turns out it's this really cool through hike in Nevada, longest one in the state. So ever since that trip, I've been kind of obsessed with getting this done. Now, my original plan included a hiking partner and 2 cars. So we would park a car at the start, we would park a car at the end, walk to the one car, drive back, pick up the other car. As of last week, my hiking partner can no longer go. So I am solo on this trip, which adds, a whole nother element of challenge and concern and just logistically it's a little bit more difficult. So what I'll probably end up doing is my wife and I'll drive up Thursday night before the hike starts. She will shuttle me back. Um, I would love that, Kelman. If you should just find a way to get to Reno, and we will do this. You have 4 days. Um, so anyway, my wife was going to shuttle me down, follow me down. We'll park at the end of the trail. She'll drive me back to the northern trailhead and leave me there. And then I'll just walk back to my car, just walk south back to my car. So I do have a couple of pretty significant fears and concerns, especially now that I'm doing it solo. There's I'm doing it a little bit late in the season, and I know that sounds weird since it's only July, and it'll be the beginning of July when I do this. But Nevada is a different beast. If you've ever hiked anywhere in the high desert, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, you probably know what I'm talking about. So, um, some of the water sources that I am kind of counting on might be dried up by the time I get there. So I have to really plan out my water carries and water rationing and things like that. The first day in particular, I think my first water source is like 8 miles in, and then the second one is 8 miles after that. The second day, water's no problem. I follow um, this kind of line of springs all the way down, and there's water probably every 3 to 5 miles. And then the very last day, first part of the day is gonna be pretty dry, and then the second part all the way to the end, I'll follow the Reese River, and then I'll follow South Creek all the way out through the canyon. So there's really just kind of this one big chunk at the very beginning and this one big chunk in the middle where water could be a pretty serious concern. So that's something that's on my mind. I'm really thinking a lot about water as you do when you're in the backcountry. Um, I'm a little concerned about the mileage. I mean, I typically walk anywhere from 20 to 25 miles a day when I'm on a trail. That's what my routine was on the Tahoe Rim Trail. I was kind of consistently hitting that 21-mile mark every day. And I had one 35-mile day on the Tahoe Rim Trail. So, um, 15, 16, in my mind, in my hiking experience, doesn't sound like a lot, but this is very rugged terrain, and this is not a very well-maintained trail. So there is going to be some degree of, um, route finding and, it's possible that I could kinda lose the trail here and there, and I just sort of have to keep moving, um, south. And hope I don't get, like, cliffed out or something like that. So, I've taken a couple of precautions to alleviate those concerns. One, I'm carrying a paper map, always carry a paper map, and then I downloaded a GPX track into both OnX and Caltopo. And I know that sounds like overkill, but there's a method to my madness. I am very new to OnX. I only just downloaded it like 4 days ago, 5 days ago. So I don't have a ton of experience with that app. The Caltopo app, I know like the back of my hand. So I wanted to have the map in both of those apps, because if for some reason, I'm struggling with the learning curve on Onyx, I have that Caltopo to fall back on. That is something I'm very, very familiar with. So I mean, and apps don't add any weight to your pack, so I can put it in as many apps as I want. Um, Another kind of weird concern that I have is the kind of loneliness of a trail like this. And I know that's a weird thing for a backpacker to say because we're in search of solitude, but solitude and loneliness are two different things. I found a great deal of solitude on the Tahoe Rim Trail, even though it's a fairly popular trail, and I ran into hikers throughout the day. All my campsites were by myself. I didn't have to really camp near anyone unless I wanted to. Um, and I bumped into people throughout the day. On this trip, it's highly likely that I won't see a single human being for 4 days, and that's a weird place to be. Like even for a backpacker, like um, I do think that there's a significant difference between solitude and loneliness, and loneliness can make you want to quit a hike, whereas solitude kind of makes you want to stay out longer. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm just a little worried about not seeing anyone at all for 4 days. Not a huge concern. It's something I'm sure I'll overcome. The views out there are extraordinary, so I'll have plenty of things to look at and occupy my time with. So, but it's kind of in the back of my mind, like, wow, it's going to be weird not seeing a single person. Um, and then the last kind of concern that I have, I actually have data to back this one up. When I was out there 2 weeks ago, I bumped into four hikers who had stayed overnight at in that South Creek Canyon, in where my hike is ending, and they saw pretty fresh and new evidence of a big cat in one of the canyons, Sheep Canyon, which was where I was planning on camping one night. And so now I've altered that plan because I don't want to set up camp where I know there's a cat, because those are scary. Um, so anyway, those are the fears and concerns that I have going into the trip. Gives you a little bit of background about the trip, and the trail itself. Gear is something that I have spent. I'm not a planner when it comes to backpacking, and I know I can see a few names in the comment chat section here that are cringing at that comment, but typically I just pick a destination and I go and I deal with what happens as it comes. I don't do a significant amount of research into the area. I don't, outside of like knowing where water is and where camping is. That's pretty much all I ever really worry about. This trip, I have dug so deep into the research and dug so deep into just gathering as much data and as much information as I can, in particular because I'm going to be solo. I think that adds a whole different element of concern and, for my safety um and just your overall well-being. It's better to know things, I guess. Can you guys hear my dog barking? That's Ranger. I have a video with him coming out very soon, so you get to see him go on his first hike sometime next week, probably. Um, but I think I'm coming around to the planning thing, and I'm sure Devin's happy to hear that because he is a planner. Um, there's a lot to know. Um, there's a lot to be said for knowing what you're getting into, I guess is how I'm going to phrase that. There's a lot to be said for knowing what you're getting into. And on a trail like this, where the trail could disappear, where I already know there's flood damage, where I know there are large predators, um, it's better just to have the information and to know things. Like if I didn't know that there was this cat in Sheep Canyon, I set up camp there, that could be wildly dangerous. So now I know I'll camp elsewhere. Um, but gear has been one of the things that I typically don't think that much about. I have a kit that works for me and I just carry it on every trip. But going into this trip in particular, I'm making some changes. Um, One, to cut some weight because I do have that huge gain on the first day, and I don't want to carry a ton of weight uphill for half a day. And two, just navigating some of the flood damage and stuff like that with a lighter pack sounds like it would be safer in general. Um, so for my sleep system, I'm bringing the same thing I always bring. I've got my 30-degree uh, enlightened equipment quilt. I have my Nemo Tensor all season, um, and my little Sea to Summit pillow, and that's my typical sleep system. I very rarely stray from that specific setup. Shelter, I'm still kind of on the fence about. I have two options. I have my Durston X-Mid two-person, and then I have my Tarp Tent Rainbow, which is a one-person. The weight difference between the two is pretty minimal. Um, the space difference in the Durston is significant. I have a lot of extra living space, a lot of extra room, but that comes with a larger footprint. And it is a trekking pole only tent. So I don't know for sure that I'm going to have an area where I can effectively set up a trekking pole tent. The tarp tent is a semi freestanding, and then with my trekking poles, it can be fully freestanding, and it has a much, much smaller footprint. So there's pros and cons to both. I think I'm like 95% sure that I'm going to take the rainbow, but that could change. Um, the rainbow's done me well. I enjoy that tent. It's comfortable to sleep in. There's enough living space in the rainbow. Um, and if it goes the way I think it's going to go, I'm not going to be in the tent that much. Like I'll probably walk sun up to sundown, eat, sleep, pack everything up, and go. So it's not like I'm going to be in the shelter for a significant amount of time. So living space may not even be something to be concerned with. Um, Very minimal extra clothing on this trip, largely to keep the weight down. So I'm bringing a change of shirt so I don't have to sleep in my sweaty, gross sun hoodie. I'm bringing a pair of compression socks because as I get older, I have learned that I need a little extra help recovering, especially after long days on the trail. And so I got these knee high compression socks that I sleep in. And they really help a lot with recovery and just feeling better in the morning and getting moving again for the next day's miles. And that's it. Oh, and a beanie and a pair of gloves. And so that's it for extra clothes. One shirt, one pair of socks, one beanie, one pair of gloves. Not bringing anything else in terms of just like clothing. I will bring some kind of puffy jacket as an extra insulation layer and probably a rain jacket, which may or may not end up staying in the car. We'll see. We'll see what the weather looks like when we get closer to the trip. I might roll the dice on that and just leave the raincoat, save that half pound. Um, it's only half a pound. It's probably a dumb idea to leave the raincoat behind, but if I don't need it, eh, make my pack just that much lighter, I might end up doing that. Um, the biggest change in my kit, and this was a hard cut. This was something that was very difficult for me to come to this decision, but I'm not going to bring my big camera. I'm not going to bring the Canon. I'm just going to shoot everything, stills and video, on my phone. And the reason for that is the Canon with the lens and the extra batteries weighs 2 pounds. So if I can shave that 2 pounds off, I'm still going to be able to take pictures. I'm still going to be able to get quality video just with just my phone. And then that also means I don't have to bring one battery pack just to charge my phone. I don't have to bring a spare battery pack to keep the camera going too. So saving a considerable amount of weight leaving the camera at home. But as someone who kind of fancies himself a photographer, it was a tough decision. That was a really hard call to look at this camera that's gone with me on just about every backpacking trip and go, I think you're gonna have to stay home. So I don't feel great about that choice, but I do think it's the right choice, if that makes sense. Um, I think that's about all of the points that I wanted to make. Does anybody have questions or um, I could beat, yeah, the loneliness by doing the voiceovers on the trail, Sean. That is a good idea, actually. Um, that would maybe require bringing like an external um, microphone or something. I don't know. I'll have to look. That's a good idea. I like where your head's at. There's a section way up on the ridge by the Totally Ridge Peak. It's like little Yosemite, massive. I have seen pictures of that. Um, I'm really excited to get to that section. I can't figure out. I'm using the YouTube app. I'm not using StreamYard, so I don't seem to be able to pop the comments out for you all to read like you see on some of these live streams. But so Tiff, I appreciate that. I have a couple of pretty quality external mics. I have a Bluetooth, this little guy set up, and then I have a really nice Rode mic that I can carry that hooks up to the iPhone. But I do appreciate the offer. Um, so yeah, I kind of I like where your head's at with that, recording the voiceovers and stuff, just rewatching the footage and figuring out where to. It's a good idea, Sean. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any like direct questions about the trail or gear or the hike in general that I could answer while we're all here? No, no questions. Did I do that great of a job explaining everything? Contingencies. That is a great question, Devin. I do actually. So I mapped out as I have gone along in Onyx and on the paper map. I found several side trails that could take me back to the car um, should the need arise. So there's the North Canyon cutoff that would take about 20 miles off the total trip and would still get me back to my car. Um, and then there are a couple other little loops here and there that I could grab that take anywhere from 8 to 10 miles off the trip and 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 would still get me back to the car. And so kind of the reason I came up with contingency plans at all was like if I'm moving really slow, if I'm not covering my mileage every day, then um I literally have the 4 days. That's all I have. So, 'cause I have to be back at work. So one way or the other, I have to be back at my car on Monday and driving home. It's like a 3.5 hour drive back to Reno. So I did come up with a couple of contingency plans and different routes should the need arise. If I'm just not covering my mileage, I'm not feeling good, if I just don't want to do it anymore, which is a totally legitimate reason to quit a hike. If you're out and you're just not feeling it and you're just not having a good time, there's no shame in bailing. Uh, what is your plan for food since what? Um, so I am gonna carry a stove, um, but I'm also carrying a little jar to cold soak. Um, so water is going to be a big issue. So I'll have breakfast that needs water and dinner that needs water, and then all the other stuff is bars and trail mix and things like that. So kind of limiting the amount of water I need to cook by just having because all of my campsites are near water. So I'll be able to definitely cook my breakfast and definitely cook my dinner. It's everything in between the walking part where I don't know where all of my water's coming from. So all the food for the middle of the day doesn't require water. And then just the stuff beginning of the day and end of day, and I'll be at creeks and rivers every night. So that's kind of the food plan. Um, I packed It averages out to 3,800 calories a day, so I have 7 pounds of food to start with, um, and I may pare that down a little bit, it might be too much. I actually just made a video not too long ago about how I carry too much food, so I'll probably revamp that, food situation a little bit and try to cut some pounds there too. Sean, yes, the trail does stay mostly on the ridge. It dips down into all of like the river and stream valleys and then climbs again. So there's going to be a lot of up and down throughout the day. The biggest climb is that first one. And then after that, it stays relatively flat. I'll lose, 200 feet of elevation here, gain another 300 there. Nothing totally wild, but the majority of the hike is right along that ridge line, that crest. What am I looking forward to the most about this hike? The views. I've seen a bunch of pictures people have taken, and I've watched. So the first 30 miles of the trail, first 32 miles of the trail, like I mentioned earlier, is mixed use. So lots of mountain biking activity on that part of the trail, and I've seen a lot of YouTube videos and photos on Instagram and stuff like that from that first section, and the views up there are just astonishing. So I'm really excited to see those in person. What are we looking at? Let's see my notes here. Yeah, I covered everything in my notes. Um, it's going to be an interesting trip, and I think even more so now that I'm going solo. There is some nervousness, some anxiety, um, being alone, and I think that applies to anytime you're alone on trail. There's a little bit of nervousness. It's always better to kind of go with a friend. Um, but I think in particular, um, I'm nervous because it's a new place. It when my hiking partner left on the Tahoe Rim Trail and I had to finish by myself, I'd been to all those places before. I've section hiked that entire trail, so I was alone, and there was a little tiny bit of hesitation and nervousness, but I was alone in an area that I'm super familiar with, like area that I knew kind of like the back of my hand. So I knew what to expect. I knew what was coming next. So I was able to kind of mitigate some of that anxiety just by being in familiar spaces. Um, this trail, I've only done the last 5 miles out of 62. So it's all brand new. Um, the trip reports I've read vary from this is amazing, go do this hike, everyone should do this hike, to this place is terrible and it's dangerous and don't ever go here. So trying to find that middle ground between, because like I think anytime you read about a trail online, you have to kind of ask yourself, like, who is the person writing this trip report? Who's the person writing this review? Is this someone who's like wildly experienced and they've been on a bunch of different trails and they know what they're talking about? Or is this kind of like a newbie hiker that bit off more than they could chew? They went to a really hard place before they were ready. So reading a lot of the trip reports, it's kind of funny to see there's no middle ground. People are either just like this place is absolutely incredible or this place is terrible. So I think the truth lies in the middle somewhere. I think, and I'm a fairly experienced backpacker. I have a lot of miles under my feet, so I think I'm gonna be fine for the most part. Um, it's gonna be really hot, and that is another kind of major concern for me, especially with the scarcity of water, is that, the temperatures are gonna be it's gonna be warm. A lot of sun exposure. The whole trip, like I say, is basically over 10,000 feet, so there's not a lot, you're above the tree line. So, heat, distance, and lack of water, I think are gonna be my biggest challenges. So, yeah, so that is it. The Tyobe Crest Trail. Oh, that is one other cool thing I wanna say uh, it loosely translates Tyobe loosely translates to mountain in the Shoshone language, which I thought was kind of a cool little fact to know, um, about an area that I'm going. So, if there are no other questions, I think that about covers it. And yeah, Kelman, I agree. This is going to be an amazing adventure. And even if I don't finish, like even if I don't walk the whole 62 miles, if I have to bail out on one of my contingency trails, like it's going to be incredible. No matter what happens. And I think that's one of the cool things about backpacking in general, is that even a bad hike is still pretty great. Right. Well, thank you all for joining me, and we'll talk again real soon. Have a good night.